I mean, it is incredibly easy to be a philosopher in an empty room.
Oh, absolutely. It's the safest place to be.
Right. You just sit there in a comfortable chair, you're perfectly insulated from the elements, and you construct these symmetrical, just flawless systems of right and wrong.
You draw your little ethical boxes, you connect all the arrows, and you map out exactly how the world should operate.
Exactly. But the second you step outside that room, you enter the actual messy, completely unpredictable world, and, well, those perfect geometric shapes just shatter.
They don't survive contact with reality.
No, they don't. You are suddenly off the drafting table and you're just standing on a battlefield. And that is exactly where Chapter 9 of Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma, the Elu of the Nine, leaves us stranded.
Yeah, it is a very deliberate and I would say violent transition.
Violent is a good word for it.
Because up until this point in the text, the philosophical focus has been entirely on the theoretical framework of building. We've been discussing the foundation of a moral architecture.
Right, the ideals of truth, the geometry of the universe, all that high-level stuff.
Exactly. But in the Elu of the Nine, the sanctuary doors are just thrown open.
Yeah.
The comfort of the armchair is instantly replaced by the severe, unyielding friction of reality.
It's a huge shift.
It is. Pike isn't interested in what you believe in a vacuum anymore. He is interrogating what you're actually prepared to do when the world actively opposes those beliefs.
And to understand why this shift is so jarring, I mean, we really have to look at the specific allegory this chapter is built around.
The Hiram-Abiff narrative.
Right. For those following this deep dive, you know that much of this text relies on the allegorical framework of the building of King Solomon's temple.
Which is central to the whole philosophy.
Yeah. And the central tragedy of that mythos is the murder of the chief architect, Hiram-Abiff, by 3 ruffians. They wanted to extort the secret master word from him.
And when he refuses, they kill him.
Exactly. And with the architect dead, the temple's construction is thrown into absolute chaos. Everything stops.
The blueprints are gone.
Right. So, the Elu of the Nine, which translates to the 9 elect, these are the 9 individuals chosen by King Solomon to go out into the wilderness and track down these assassins.
And that narrative shift is just paramount.
Yeah.
We move from the masons quietly carving stones in a quarry to a literal manhunt.
Yeah, it's suddenly a true crime story.
It really is. The mission is no longer to build, the mission is to confront the rot that has halted the building.
Which is such a heavy burden.
It perfectly encapsulates the core question of our deep dive today, which is, what do you do when justice actually demands action?
Because theoretically, every Mason in that allegory mourns the architect.
Oh, sure. Every single one of them theoretically believed the murder was a terrible wrong.
But only 9 were chosen.
Exactly. Only 9 had to leave the safety of the city and venture into the dark, unknown caves to actually do something about it.
So I want to unpack this a bit. Why does the text insist that the shift from theoretical belief to physical action is the true defining test of character? Because honestly, it feels like a call out to our modern sensibilities. Like, we frequently see something wrong, maybe a systemic failure or some corrupted institution, and we think, well, I don't support that.
Right. We post about it online or complain to our friends.
Yeah, and we convince ourselves that internal disagreement is a sufficient moral stance. Like, I'm a good person because I don't like the bad thing. Why does the Elu of the Nine just strip that defense away?
It strips it away because internal disagreement costs you absolutely nothing.
Wow. Yeah.
When you hold a quiet belief, you remain safely in the realm of potential. You risk 0 social capital, you face no physical danger, and you invite no judgment.
You're completely safe.
Right. But the moment you act, the moment you step forward as one of the elect to actually correct the wrong, you step into the arena of consequence.
And there are always consequences.
Always. The text frames the true burden of the Elu, not merely as the capacity to recognize injustice. Anyone can do that. It's framed as the agonizing judgment of timing.
Timing. Say more about that.
The demand for justice is almost always immediate. If you witness a wrong, and you spend too long in theoretical deliberation, analyzing every possible angle just to ensure your own safety, the window closes.
The injustice just takes root.
Exactly. It's solidified.
It's like the paralysis of overanalysis.
Precisely. And remember, Pike is writing this in 1871, in the immediate aftermath of the American Civil War. He understood the devastating costs of delayed action.
Right. He literally lived through the consequences of it.
He witnessed the nation tear itself apart, arguably because theoretical debates about justice failed to translate into timely, principled action for decades.
People just talked and talked while the rot spread.
Yeah. So the Elu of the Nine places an immense philosophical weight on immediacy. When the moment of crisis arrives, you cannot retreat to your books to consult the rules.
You don't have time to look up the manual.
No. You are required to meet the demand of the moment with whatever moral clarity you have managed to cultivate up to that exact point.
But the friction of that moment is incredibly intense. I mean, think about a time when you, listening to this right now, knew intrinsically what the right thing to do was, but you felt that heavy, almost physical resistance to taking the first step.
That tightening in your chest.
Yeah, that feeling of your heart pounding, your throat tightening, that is the biological friction between theory and action.
It's very real.
And it makes me wonder, if the friction is that intense, what is the specific catalyst required to propel us over the edge, to move from thought into action?
Well, the text points directly to moral courage.
Right, but I want to unpack how it defines that, because it's not what we typically picture when we hear the word courage.
No, it's not. We typically picture physical bravery, like a soldier on a battlefield or a first responder rushing toward danger.
Which is obviously incredibly important.
Absolutely vital. Physical courage is a deeply vital virtue.
Well,
But the Elu of the Nine pivots sharply away from it. The focus here is explicitly on moral courage.
which is very different.
Very. This is the courage to stand for truth, to act despite social fear, and to do what is right even when it is professionally or personally destructive.
Even when it ruins your life.
Right. And the text makes a profound observation here. Our greatest moral failures rarely stem from ignorance.
Wait, really, it's not that we just don't know the facts.
Rarely. We almost always know exactly what the right thing to do is. The data is usually right in front of us. Our failures stem from hesitation.
That is a fascinating mechanism to explore. It's not a lack of data, it's a failure of execution.
Exactly.
So why do we freeze when the data is so clear?
To understand the mechanism of that hesitation, we really have to contrast the physics of physical fear with moral fear.
Okay, lay that out for me.
So, physical fear is a biological imperative. Your amygdala detects a predator, and it instantly floods your system with adrenaline to either fight or flee.
It's binary and immediate. Bear attacks, you run.
Exactly. Moral fear, however, is the fear of the tribe.
The fear of being cast out.
Yes. Evolutionarily speaking, being ostracized from your community meant certain death out in the wilderness. You couldn't survive alone.
So the stakes felt identical.
They were identical. So today, our brains treat social ostracization like losing your job, being publicly shamed, alienating your peer group with the exact same neurological panic as a physical threat.
That explains so much. So when we see a corrupt system, our prefrontal cortex says, this is wrong, I really must speak up.
But your limbic system is screaming, if you speak up, the tribe will turn on you, and you will literally die.
Oh, wow, so you just freeze.
You freeze. And overcoming that specific neurological override is the true hallmark of character in this chapter.
Because it's fighting millions of years of evolution.
Exactly. Most of us will not be called upon to risk our physical lives for justice today, but almost all of us will face a moment where we must choose between going along with a comfortable, profitable lie or standing up for an uncomfortable, costly truth.
Let's ground this in a high-stakes historical context to really see how this plays out, because I think everyday examples sometimes water it down.
Sure.
Instead of a generic workplace scenario, let's look at something like the leaking of the Pentagon Papers by Daniel Ellsberg in 1971.
That is an excellent example.
Right. Here is a man sitting inside the military-industrial complex, and he's reading classified documents that explicitly prove the government is systematically lying to the public about the Vietnam War.
There is zero ignorance there.
None. He knows the facts, he has the raw data in his hands, but the hesitation, the moral fear, must have been monumental.
Unimaginable.
Because if he acts, he is looking at decades in federal prison. He will be called a traitor by his own colleagues. He will lose his clearance, his career, his entire status.
That is the perfect embodiment of the crucible of moral courage.
Because he could have just kept his head down.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The rationalizations Ellsberg could have used are the exact same ones the text warns the Elu against.
Like what?
He could have said, I can do more good by staying on the inside, or it's not my place to make this decision, I'm just an analyst.
Someone higher up will eventually fix this.
Exactly. I'll let the system correct itself. These are the classic mechanisms of moral self-deception. We convince ourselves that our inaction is actually a form of strategic patience or like institutional loyalty.
I'm just being prudent.
Right. But the text destroys that rationalization completely. It argues that if you possess the truth and you see the injustice, the burden of action falls squarely on you.
There's no passing the buck.
None. To do nothing is to become actively complicit. Moral courage is the act of refusing to accept your own rationalizations.
It is acting in spite of the absolute certainty that the tribe will punish you for it.
And they almost always will. And this leads us to one of the most brilliant but also dangerous paradoxes in the entire allegory.
Okay, right.
Because let's say you actually find that moral courage. Let's say you conquer the hesitation. You push past the fear of the tribe, and you step out to confront the injustice.
You do the brave thing.
Right. You are immediately confronted with a massive pitfall.
Why?
Because the moment you take bold action, especially action that's fueled by a sense of righteous indignation, it is terrifyingly easy for that action to mutate.
Mutate into what?
Into revenge. The text warns that the Elu must draw a razor-thin line between justice and revenge.
Oh, right. This is where the Masonic allegory of the nine elect becomes incredibly vital again.
Let's go back to the story.
Yeah, let's look at Joobert. So, one of the 9 men chosen to hunt down the assassins is named Joobert. And Joobert is just full of zeal.
He is highly motivated.
Very. He is the first to find the cavern where the primary assassin, Akirop, is hiding. And Joobert actually has the moral courage to enter the dark cave alone.
Which takes incredible bravery.
Exactly. But when he sees the man who murdered the Grand Master, Joobert's indignation just takes over completely.
He loses it.
He does. Instead of capturing the assassin and bringing him back to King Solomon to face, like, a fair and measured trial, Joobert acts on pure emotion.
He takes matters into his own hands.
He draws a dagger, stabs the assassin in the head and the heart, literally cuts off his head, and brings it back to the king, fully expecting to be praised as a hero.
He thinks he's solved the problem.
He really does. But King Solomon's reaction is the crux of this whole chapter's lesson. Solomon isn't pleased at all.
He is furious.
He nearly has Joobert executed on the spot.
Right, and why? Because Joobert did not enact justice. He enacted revenge.
He blurred the line completely.
He allowed his personal rage, however justified it might have felt in that moment in the cave, to supersede the rule of law.
He bypassed the objective measure of the court and appointed himself judge, jury, and executioner.
Exactly. He allowed the emotion of the moment to corrupt the actual principle of justice.
That is such a profound breakdown of human psychology because, I mean, it's really easy to look at Joobert and think, well, the assassin murdered the master, he deserved it.
Sure, and ethically, maybe he did deserve the ultimate penalty.
Right. But if we break down the actual physics of how justice and revenge operate differently, it changes everything.
How so?
Well, we often conflate the two because revenge satisfies a deep evolutionary craving. When we are wronged, we want immediate, visible retribution.
We want to see the person suffer.
Exactly. We want to see the scales balance in real time. But revenge is inherently backward-looking. It is entirely focused on the past hurt. And its only mechanism is adding more pain to the world to, like, mathematically balance out the pain that was originally inflicted.
Yes, and because revenge is backward-looking, it is emotionally reactive and totally uncontrolled.
It's messy.
Very messy. Justice, on the other hand, is fundamentally forward-looking.
That's a great distinction.
Its primary goal is not merely to punish the past, but to establish a precedent of truth and fairness for the future.
It's about setting the standard.
Exactly. The text insists that true justice requires calm judgment, clear thinking, and absolute total control over emotion. Without those elements, justice is corrupted into a form of violence that simply perpetuates the cycle.
I'm trying to visualize the difference in how they function. It's like revenge is taking a sledgehammer to a problem.
A sledgehammer, right?
You swing it with all your might because the release of that kinetic energy just feels good. You have adrenaline, you have anger, you just want to smash the injustice to pieces.
It's cathartic.
It is, but the collateral damage of a sledgehammer is massive. You're breaking everything around the target too.
You are.
Whereas justice is more like wielding a surgeon's scalpel. It requires precision. It requires a steady hand, completely devoid of tremors or rage.
Because the goal of the scalpel isn't destruction.
Right. The goal is the removal of the disease to facilitate healing.
That is a brilliant way to look at it. The scalpel requires an objective, dispassionate operator.
You don't want an angry surgeon.
No. If the surgeon is shaking with rage against the tumor, they will inevitably sever healthy tissue.
They'll kill the patient to kill the disease.
Exactly. And this is why Pike demands that calm judgment is a non-negotiable prerequisite for the Elu. If you act out of anger, Even if your cause is initially righteous, you immediately lose the moral high ground.
You become the thing you're fighting.
You do. You are no longer serving the principle of justice. You are serving your own ego and your own emotional reactivity. You literally become Joabert in the cave.
But wait, this brings up a huge issue for me. If I am supposed to be this surgeon wielding the scalpel of justice, who ensures my hand is actually steady?
That is the big question.
Because if my emotions can compromise my judgment so easily, how does the text propose we keep our own subjective biases in check? Because, let's be honest, we all think our anger is righteous.
Everyone thinks they're the good guy.
Right. We all think our sledgehammer is actually a scalpel. This naturally leads us to the sheer, crushing burden of absolute accountability.
Yes, it does. Because for justice to actually be a scalpel, it has to be objective.
It can't play favorites.
Exactly. And for it to be objective, the rules must apply equally to every single person, regardless of their proximity to you.
And that is incredibly hard.
The Ilu of the Nine teaches that accountability is the core mechanism by which justice is realized. You must hold the world accountable, but equally, you must hold yourself and your allies accountable.
Oh, that's where it hurts.
It does. The blindfold on the statue of Lady Justice isn't just about ignoring wealth or status. It's about ignoring the deeply ingrained tribal urge to protect your own people.
And this is where I really have to push back, because this feels like it demands a violation of another deeply held virtue, which is loyalty.
It certainly feels that way.
If I discover that a close friend or, someone who belongs to my political party or someone who fought in the trenches with me has committed a grave injustice, applying strict, blind justice feels like a betrayal.
It feels like stabbing them in the back.
Yeah. If I turn my brother in, I am breaking the bond of brotherhood. Doesn't strict justice destroy loyalty? How does the text reconcile two competing virtues like that?
It reconciles them by establishing a very clear hierarchy of virtues.
Okay, what's at the top?
In Pike's framework, truth and justice outrank tribal loyalty. Always. No exceptions.
Wow, always.
Always. What you are describing, the instinct to protect a friend who has done wrong, is what we might call weaponized favoritism.
Weaponized favoritism.
Yes. It is the root of almost all systemic corruption. When an institution decides that protecting the reputation of the institution or the safety of its members is more important than the objective truth, that institution has lost all its moral legitimacy.
It's the blue wall of silence in policing.
Exactly.
Or the way corporations will quietly shuffle an abusive executive to a different department rather than actually firing them and facing a scandal.
It's loyalty masquerading as virtue.
That is so insidious, because you feel like you're doing a good thing by protecting them.
You do. It is severe cognitive dissonance. We convince ourselves that protecting our ally is a noble act of brotherhood, when in reality it is a direct subversion of justice.
We're just being cowards with a noble label.
Exactly. The text demands immense internal fortitude here, because the true cost of fairness is often your own comfort and your own relationship.
You will lose friends over this.
You absolutely will.
Yeah.
If you only apply justice when it is convenient, or, you only apply it against people you already dislike, you aren't practicing justice at all.
What are you practicing?
You are practicing tribal warfare.
Oof. That hits hard.
It's meant to. The Ilu must possess the chilling capacity to look at a close friend and say, I love you, but you are wrong and you must face the consequences.
That is an incredibly lonely path.
It is the loneliest path.
If the Ilu requires the moral courage to face the wrath of the crowd, the cold discipline to avoid the seduction of revenge, and the brutal impartiality to hold your own friends to the fire, it almost makes you think the only winning move is not to play.
Just walk away from the table.
Exactly. Wouldn't it just be easier and honestly perhaps safer to retreat? To just say, the world is too messy, I cannot perfectly balance this scalpel, so I will simply step back and remain neutral.
It is the most tempting rationalization of all.
It sounds so peaceful.
It does. But the text aggressively closes that loophole.
Of course it does.
Pike does not allow for neutrality in the face of known injustice. The idea that we can step back and keep our hands clean is presented as a complete illusion.
You can't wash your hands of it.
No. The text asserts that every single decision carries consequences, and crucially, inaction is a decision.
I want to explore the mechanics of that, because we often talk about the sin of omission.
Right.
When institutions decay, it's rarely because of one massive act of villainy, right? It's usually because of 1,000 small acts of silence.
Death by 1,000 cuts.
Exactly.
Yep.
Let's go back to the allegory of the temple. If the Masons see that the architect is dead and the blueprints are lost, and they choose to simply lay down their tools and do nothing, they aren't staying neutral.
They're making a choice.
Their inaction is actively causing the temple to remain unfinished. They are complicit in the failure of the project.
That is a brilliant application of the myth. The myth of neutrality is the false belief that passivity is an absence of action.
Like doing nothing is just nothing.
Right, but passivity shapes reality just as aggressively as direct action does.
It leaves a vacuum.
It does. If you possess the knowledge of an injustice, and you possess the capability to act, then choosing inaction is a deliberate endorsement of the status quo.
You are voting with your silence to allow the injustice to continue.
It's the classic bystander dilemma. If you're standing by the train tracks and see the disaster unfolding, refusing to pull the lever isn't staying neutral.
You are still making a choice about the outcome.
Exactly. It's the realization that you are responsible not just for the glass you break, but for the glass you watch someone else break when you could have stopped them.
That is a terrifying level of responsibility.
It is the staggering burden of consciousness. Once you understand the mechanics of justice, you cannot unsee your own role in its execution.
You can't put the blindfold back on.
You can't. The text states very clearly that responsibility cannot be avoided. You cannot recuse yourself from the moral fabric of the universe.
So claiming to be neutral.
To claim neutrality is simply a cowardly way of aligning with the oppressor without taking the reputational hit of doing so publicly.
Wow. Okay, so we are forced into the arena. We have no choice. We must act, we must be impartial, we must resist revenge, and we absolutely cannot look away.
That's the burden of the Ely.
But the pressure of balancing all of these demands inevitably creates massive conflict, which brings us to the ultimate test outlined in this chapter.
The crucible.
Right. Because it's one thing to understand all these theories while we're chatting here, but what happens when the actual physical weight of the world bears down on you? The text refers to this as maintaining a grip on the truth within the crucible.
Yes.
How does Pike, coming from his 19th century esoteric background, define the crucible?
Well, the word crucible has deep alchemical origins, which would have been intimately familiar to a mind like Pike's.
Oh, interesting. Alchemy.
Right. In alchemy and metallurgy, a crucible is a vessel designed to withstand extreme sustained heat. You place crude, impure metal into the crucible, and you expose it to a raging fire.
To melt it down.
Exactly. The heat melts the metal, and all the impurities, the dross, burn away or separate. What is left is the pure, fundamental element.
The gold.
The gold. Pike uses this as a direct analogy for human character. Valuing the truth is incredibly easy in a room temperature environment.
When nothing is at stake.
Right. When there are no stakes, literally everyone is a champion of the truth. But what happens when the fire is lit beneath you?
When the pressure is actually on. It's easy to champion the truth, when you're at a dinner party on a sunny Tuesday afternoon with people who already agree with you.
It's a fun theoretical debate.
Yeah, you get to sound smart and righteous. But what about when telling the truth means you lose your livelihood?
Or your freedom.
Exactly. What about when the truth contradicts the central dogma of your own political party? Or when the truth makes you a target for physical harm? That pressure is the fire.
And the fire reveals what you are actually made of. The text frames intense social, professional, and physical risk as the crucible of character.
It tests the integrity of the vessel.
It tests whether your commitment to truth is a foundational principle or just a fair weather preference.
Oh, a fair weather preference. I like that phrasing.
Because if you abandon the truth the exact second it becomes socially dangerous or financially inconvenient, then the crucible has revealed that you never actually valued the truth at all.
You just valued comfort.
Exactly. You merely valued comfort, and you used truth as a convenient accessory when it suited your aesthetic.
That cognitive process of abandoning the truth for comfort is so insidious because, we rarely admit we are doing it.
Never. We never admit it.
We don't look in the mirror and say, I'm abandoning the truth because I am a coward.
No, we rebrand it.
We rebrand it. We say, I am being pragmatic, or I need to survive to fight another day, or my favorite, the truth is subjective anyway, who's to say?
Yes, the philosophical dodge.
We create these elaborate philosophical smoke screens to hide the simple fact that the fire just got too hot and we broke.
Exactly. And the Elu must actively train their character to withstand that heat. It is not an innate biological trait. It requires rigorous, conscious, daily conditioning.
You have to build the vessel.
You have to build the vessel of your character thick enough to survive the fire without cracking. because truth is practically meaningless if it is conditional on your personal safety.
It has to be unconditional.
The whistleblowers, the dissidents, the individuals who stand up against institutionalized lies, they are the ones who survive the crucible. They refuse to let lies exist unchallenged in their presence, even when the cost is literally everything.
And surviving that level of heat, holding the line against the crowd, against the institution, and against your own internal fear, that requires an almost unfathomable amount of raw power.
It requires immense strength.
Which brings us to the final and perhaps most vital warning of the entire chapter. It really serves as the master key to everything we've discussed today.
It ties it all together.
Right. Because if you cultivate this immense strength of character to enact justice, you are now holding a highly volatile energy. How does the chapter demand we wield that strength?
The entire chapter is so intense, Rates. It is this relentless drumbeat of action, consequence, stepping into the fire, and standing firm.
It's very aggressive.
It is. But paradoxically, as it concludes, it reveals itself to be a profound teaching on restraint.
Restraint after all that action.
Yes. The text dictates that strength must be controlled, directed, and guided by principle. Uncontrolled strength, no matter how righteous the initial cause that sparked it, leads only to tyranny and destruction.
I was trying to map out the physics of this restraint, and I keep coming back to the difference between a wildfire and a combustion engine.
I love this analogy. Break it down.
So uncontrolled strength is a wildfire. It might start from a single, totally legitimate spark of righteous anger against a real injustice.
The spark of truth.
Right. But once it catches the dry brush, it has no mind, no direction, and no off switch. It just consumes.
It burns indiscriminately.
It burns down the guilty, the innocent, the institutions, and the landscape itself until there is literally nothing left but ash. That's Joobert in the cave.
Exactly. And the combustion engine.
The combustion engine uses the exact same raw power fire and violent expansion. But the design of the engine relies entirely on containment.
It harnesses the explosion.
Yes. The explosions are tracked within a highly reinforced steel cylinder. They are timed, they are measured, and they are directed against a piston. Because the strength is contained and restrained by the architecture of the engine, that violent energy is transformed into directed forward momentum.
It actually moves the vehicle.
Exactly. The restraint is what makes the power useful instead of just destructive.
That is a phenomenal synthesis of Pike's core philosophy here. The Elu of the Nine is fundamentally a study in the harnessing of human power.
How to build that engine.
Right. We all possess the capacity for immense strength, particularly when we are motivated by the potent fuel of perceived injustice. Anger is an incredible fuel.
It gets things moving.
It does. But the warning is absolute. Do not let the power itself become the master. It is easy to lash out. It is easy to let the wildfire burn.
It feels good to let it burn.
It does. It takes phenomenal, agonizing strength to hold that power in check within the cylinder of your own morality.
So restraint isn't the absence of power. It is the ultimate manifestation of it.
Precisely. To direct your strength solely toward the principled goal of justice, and to possess the absolute discipline to stop the very moment justice is achieved. That is the hardest thing a human being can do.
Knowing when to stop.
It requires shutting off the engine while you still have a full tank of fuel. The text leaves us with a profound dichotomy. Strength without principle is tyranny.
It's just bullying.
It is just the imposition of your will upon the world. But strength with principle. Strength guided by clear thought, moral courage, and absolute restraint. That is justice.
Strength without principle is tyranny. Strength with principle is justice. That is just. That is the defining architecture of the Elu.
It really is.
So as we pull back from the intricacies of this chapter, let's distill the massive journey you, the listener, just took with us. We started by walking out of the comfortable philosopher's room and realizing that justice is not a passive belief.
Right. It is a relentless demand for action.
Then we examined the anatomy of moral courage, recognizing that our failures are rarely born of ignorance, but of the biological and social hesitation to face the judgment of our own tribe.
We analyzed the razor's edge between justice and revenge, understanding that the sledgehammer of emotional retribution is a corruption of the calm, forward-looking scalpel required to actually heal a wrong.
We confronted the crushing burden of absolute accountability, acknowledging that true justice must be blind to favoritism, forcing us to hold even our closest allies to the fire.
We shattered the comforting myth of neutrality, proving that inaction is a deliberate choice and that the sin of omission makes us complicit in the decay of our institutions.
We stepped into the crucible, seeing that our commitment to truth is only verified when it survives the extreme heat of risk, pressure, and potential ruin.
And finally, we saw that the immense power required to survive all of this must be contained within the engine of restraint, because power without principle only builds a new tyranny.
This has been an incredibly rigorous exploration, and it requires a deep, uncomfortable recalibration of how we view our own daily actions.
It really does. It doesn't let you off the hook. And the architecture continues to build. The journey of moral development is far from over.
Oh, there's more.
Much more. In our next deep dive, we will move forward into Chapter 10, the Elu of the 15. There we will see how this intense, razor-sharp focus on confronting the assassins of truth expands into a much broader, comprehensive framework for societal responsibility.
I am already looking forward to dissecting that. But before we go, we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
A bit of homework.
Yeah. We've spent this time discussing the profound weight of choice and the absolute illusion of neutrality. So building on everything we've unpacked today, what silent choices have you made today?
Just today.
Just today or in the last week, what did you walk past? What casual lie did you ignore? What uncomfortable truth did you decide just wasn't worth the friction of speaking up about?
Because every single time you remained silent, you made a choice that shaped the reality around you.
The question is, are you prepared to accept the consequences of the reality you are silently helping to build?
A harrowing but deeply necessary question for anyone claiming to seek the truth.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Remember that the pursuit of knowledge is not a spectator sport. It is an active, demanding endeavor. Keep questioning the architecture of the world around you, and we will be right here to explore the blueprints with you next time.